And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Monday, April 8th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is my son, my co-host Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of news you're not going to find elsewhere, or at least not in the manner in which we present it. We see the far side of the news, and we deliver to you the important news in 3D, where we're able to see past or through the headlines, providing you with the 3D glasses, trademarked by the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. You can find us on our home base on the internet at Hagmann or at HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. You can also watch us as we broadcast in high-def video on the Christians United Broadcasting Network as well. And I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us, your belief and trust in us as we walk through these headlines, these news stories, these very, very perilous times in which we live. We're a listener-supported broadcast, and we want to thank everyone who's helped us stay on the air through your financial support, your prayers, your telling other people about the show. We've grown exponentially. We've heard from people just about every country I can think of, and it's refreshing to know that people are being touched by the show. We had a tremendous show last night, didn't we?
The show last night was absolutely fantastic. I did not go back and listen to it again yet, and I plan on doing that as soon as I can, but it was a very powerful show.
I got to tell you, I've heard from so many people about that program, about the show, and about Pastor Langford, and about Steve, and about how, we things that we suffer through, and I mean that literally suffer through as people, and of course as a nation, and whatever nation you might be listening to this from, you have similar problems, and we're in this together. We are the remnant, or a remnant, and I don't want to overstate our position, but I don't know how else to say it, at least trying to fulfill that position. And I just want to say that regardless, if you are physically alone, you're not alone. And we, in addition to attempting to provide you with what's important, we also try to provide you with helpful information where we can assist you with practical advice of dealing with what's coming. And there's a lot coming. We've got a lot of news. Joe is busy in studio all day today going through the news. While I took a break from things, he was holding down the fort, and I got to tell you, he was doing some incredible research. Let's go over, Joe, the headlines which we're going to hit. And folks, by the way, we will be taking calls during the third hour of the show, but the first 2 hours we're going to dedicate to the news analysis, the information that you're not getting through the Western media. But what caught your eye today, Joe, in terms of news headlines? Significant news headlines.
Where to begin? We had so much going on. I was doing research, and I was all over the place on different stories and trying to dig down into some of them and coming up empty-handed in some of my thinking. But we had a few audio clips we're going to play tonight. I'm going to start out with this because even though this was definitely not on the top of my list for important news, this goes directly to the mindset of where we are headed.
This sets the tone.
The subject tonight, the setup, the grand setup is meaning the setup of the war theater we're seeing, the psychological operations being conducted against the citizens of the world through or by the globalists, and doing it through their influence of owning everything from the banks to the cable companies to most of the media outlets. We're being set up as they are planning our demise. But first, I want to play this. This is a commercial that is running on MSNBC. It's 30 seconds. I'm going to play it and then comment on the other side.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
There you have it.
Did you hear that?
We have to get rid of the idea that the parents own or
have control over
the
children.
It is the collective who owns the children. It is the
village.
Government who owns the children. This sounds like the Soviet Union, and you are a warden of the state from birth. And I actually played this before the show to a family member here, and they said, well, couldn't they use that against the abortion argument? I said, you could technically, but they don't consider people human beings until they're at least 3 years old. So, no. When they say children, they're not talking about fetuses. As we know, they don't believe life starts until after they determine.
See,
that
this
life
is
starts.
Total control. And as the program does begin to unfold, and it will rather rapidly, and with issues tying things together today, you're going to see, folks, how transparent the New World Order is becoming. And people now are, it's one thing to talk about the New World Order. It was one thing to talk about it 20 years ago. And people understood that some people understood about the New World Order, that there was one, or that there was this push toward this global governance. But now, you hear advertisements, commercials like this, where it's for the children. It takes a village to raise a child.
This wasn't for the children. This is for the government.
Well, but on the behalf of the children, because, of course, we haven't thrown enough money at the Department of Education. You see, one of the communist planks, or one of the planks for the New World Order, is the communist Department of Education, which never should have been created, but the DEA was created. The Department of Education was created for the very indoctrination of our children into this certain mindset to accept. I want to say to make them zombies, but to accept the mentality of the state, of the government. This is what we're talking about here, and this is what's being pushed down the throats of every American. And people are hearing this, and they're saying, okay, yeah, that sounds really good, without thinking it through.
Well, the strategy that is being used here is the divide and conquer strategy, at least for America. It's been used in politics and in economics across the world. What it does is one major power breaks down a targeted group, we'll say Christians, into more manageable pieces. They'll divide them along ideals or divisions within their respected issue or whatever it is that they're trying to divide.
Correct.
To further break down the people.
Correct.
And divide them within themselves. Look what they did with the Tea Party. And the Tea Party was, in 2010, did the swing of the elections from a Democratic-controlled House and Senate to almost a complete change, where the overwhelming majority of Republicans were put in and got control of the House and almost the Senate. but then that disappeared. It fizzled out. But the stronger power, being the bankers, the central government, the New World Order, they have all the resources. They have the military. They have control of the economy and the actual resources that we need and use on a daily basis.
And as the program progresses, we're going to tie together domestically how the children are being exploited, and we know this, but we don't. I don't think you maybe have heard this the way we're going to explain this, in the manner we're going to explain this, how the children are being exploited and how the useful idiots, and that's a pejorative term intentionally, are promoting this anti-gun or this gun ban. I'm not going to say anti-gun, but a gun ban, a total gun ban of Americans. Of course, Joe found this. It's
I
this
found
week.
A few.
Right. This is Obama's make or break week on guns, for example. But the children figure prominently here. We're going to be getting into that. And also, and this does, folks, believe it or not, ties into what's going on the foreign end of things with North Korea and Syria and all that, which we're going to be getting into as well. But go back to the children, the guns, the make or break week on the guns.
Harry Reid actually reintroduced the gun control Dianne Feinstein bill into the Senate, and that noise you guys just heard, I think, was my dad
I think
losing his leg.
I just broke my knee.
You should have seen his face. He must have hit the sweet spot of his knee there.
Oh, yeah.
Funny. No, but the Harry Reid reintroduced the gun bill into the Senate. And this Politico article states Obama is going to find out this week whether he stretches out a narrow victory on gun control or ends up with nothing at all. 4 months after the mass shooting at Newtown, Connecticut, that might as well be, that phrase, the shooting at Newtown, might as well be sketched or engraved on the White House steps, as they use it so much for their political agenda. This analogy, they say that 4 months after the shooting in Newtown, the national debate over gun control is finally headed to the Senate floor, and the prospects still look bleak for those hoping for sweeping reform. The unlikely key to the answer, and their answer is taking your guns away, might be conservative GOP senator, our senator, Pat Toomey. And I told you about Pat Toomey.
How do you think this is going to work out?
We have Bob Casey and Pat Toomey. Both are completely compromised, and they have no regard for the Constitution or the people they represent.
No, of course not. We're seeing, folks, and for the new listeners, and we're gaining listeners all of the time. I had done a YouTube video, which it's getting out there. It's about North Korea. It's on our YouTube channel, Team K9. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, you'll see a green little TV box down there on the right. And when you click that, it takes you to our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to if you so choose. We are actively, because now we have some breathing room. Thank you to the gentleman in the Philippines. Thank you to some very generous people. Because we have got some breathing room now, we can actually use the tools to inform others. But this YouTube channel that we have, in the YouTube video about North Korea, where was I going with this, Joe? You got to help me out here. It just kind of escaped me.
Well, I'm not inside your head.
I know.
I can't help you there.
Well, I guess this is to say that. I'll just say this: if you have the opportunity, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to be putting a lot more content on that. Team K9. That's KNEIN. Of course, that's a play off of Northeast Intelligence Network. But all of this, what we're reading about, what we're seeing, fits together. And see, we're going to expose, or we're in the process of exposing how all of this is under the thumb. Oh, I know where I was going with this. There was a comment on that video about it's the New World Order, it's the 13 families, if you will. It's the power, the unseen power behind the governments and the leaders. That's exactly right. It was almost as if the commenter was taking me to task for not mentioning that.
Right.
When in fact, that's the whole
Satanists.
point.
Yes.
The Satanists. And you know something? And I got to tell you this. I am so disturbed by this satanic nature. Hawk from Steve Quayle's radio show, he would always talk about Luciferians and does talk about Luciferians and calls them the Lucies. When you start getting into the heavy-duty research and start to peel back the layers of the New World Order, you get this Luciferian component that doesn't go away. It's everywhere. It's like a bad smell. It's like did you ever walk into a house and smell cat litter or cat urine in a house? It just hangs there and it just kind of goes on your clothes and sticks with you. Well, this is what this belief system is of this New World Order, and it's everywhere that we touch, and we flip over, we just flip over a rock and it's there. So, and Joe earlier on, when we first started this endeavor, would try to talk to me about the Illuminati or try to talk to me about this satanic influence, and like a good investigator, I shut him down. I said, nah, come on. But it's there, and you've got to open your mind. If anything, I do want to say this, because I had a pretty multiple lengthy conversations with my good friend in the intelligence industry. And what people are really failing to realize right now, if anything, and he said, this is what this is really all about. We're not only missing the big picture, and think about this, ladies and gentlemen, we're not missing just the big picture. The majority of people, they're not getting the big picture. They're missing the long-range picture, because in addition to the big lie, this lie has got to be sustained and will be sustained for a long period of time. And this is all part of it. So the gun ban itinerary of this regime is in fact part of it. The children, the clip you heard from MSNBC, that's part of it. If you've noticed too how the military has been compromised from within and defanged and almost castrated, that's part of it. We're a captured operation. As I've always said, we've become a captured operation. This is all part of what we're going to be laying out tonight, and going to try to connect the dots on everything you're hearing, because there's so much white noise out there. There's so much misdirection, and people are neck deep in misdirection. Wow, it's just incredible. But just wanted to tell you about that.
And as they continue to cite the tragic deaths of some children at Sandy Hook Elementary School and use it as their platform for banning all weapons from American people, their drone program is alive and well and very healthy. And some new Bureau statistics on drone casualties show that thousands more people have been killed by drones recently in countries such as Somalia, Yemen, Pakistan, Ethiopia, North Africa. There are, in each country, we'll just give an example, Pakistan, this is reported, this is what the government is reporting, that there has been a total of 366 drone strikes. 314 of those are by Obama.
Is this, where's the outrage? Obama's a neocon. Where's that outrage, Joe?
Well, you won't see any, because these people have an agenda in the news, and not only is he a neocon, I was going through that Southern Poverty Law Center hate article or report they released, and in there are neo-Nazi groups, and one of them was the National Socialist Party,
Yep.
and which Obama was a member of at one point during his college or those years.
But we can't mention that because
that is a neo-Nazi.
That's conspiracy.
That is a neo-Nazi group. It's listed as a neo-Nazi group, a fascist neo-Nazi group, which Obama fits right into that category. He has done nothing but take George Bush's policies, aside from the implementation of the original Homeland Security Act, but it's Bush on steroids. Obviously, from 2000, if you look at the stats, from 2004 to 2013, Bush was president for about half that time, and Obama is responsible for 314 out of the 366 drone strikes in Pakistan alone.
That's a staggering number. And
killing 3,500 plus, over about 200 children, and many, another 1,500 injured.
That bears repeating. So during this time from 2004 to 2013.
Yes, in Pakistan alone. We're not talking about Yemen, Somalia, Ethiopia, none of the other countries that are being droned. Afghanistan.
So what was the total number of drone strikes in Pakistan
from 2004 to 13?
Right.
366 drone strikes. And Obama carried out 314 of those drone strikes. So all but 52 drone strikes out of the 366.
Why is this important? Are we picking on Obama? No. You know what this is? Well, in a way we are, but you know what this is? This is not only a continuity of agenda, but as you said, this Bush on steroids, or shall we say, just the exacerbation of a policy that is killing children and creating, my goodness, ill will. Can you imagine if the Mexican drug cartel, for example, if they had the capability of killing via drones in the southwest portion of the United States, what we would do, or the animosity, the animus that would be created by this if we were, in fact, at war, shall we say. So this is a continuity of agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, if this doesn't wake up the average person on the street, I don't know what would. I mean, this alone. But see, the average person on the street, they're often too busy making a living and trying to make their mortgage payment. Lord knows, we know that.
Yeah. And let's play this clip real quick. Just from our vice president over the weekend.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order, because the global order is changing again. And the institutions and the rules that worked so well in the post-World War II era for decades, they need to be strengthened. And some have to be changed.
There you go. I shortened the clip. It's a 2-minute clip, but what was important was said in the first 10 seconds. We need a new world order. He is now joined the ranks of several U.S. presidents, former and current, many talking heads and other government officials, but don't say that out loud, because you could be a terrorist, according to MSNBC and
the black helicopter crowd and the tinfoil helmet crowd and the adult male who has Star Trek paraphernalia and lives in their grandmother's basement about the New World Order. My goodness, you can't talk about that, right? I mean,
Lawrence O'Donnell. I'm not going to make you guys listen to the clips we played a few weeks ago in the Olympus Has Fallen episode, but we went through MSNBC's nightly barrage on patriots and hate groups. But Lawrence O'Donnell's exact words were, do these people who believe in a one world government conspiracy, in a new world order, actually believe what they're saying when it comes out of their mouth? Do these people think that Israel and Saudi Arabia and China will all agree to create this new world order? No, Lawrence O'Donnell, I don't. That is why the nations are assembling against Israel. It is a new world order, but it is a new world order set up for the Antichrist. And the religious aspect, or the biblical element that you lack in your mind. If you did a little research, you would have your answers on that. But the fact of the way they mock this, the way they put this in West Point documents, Army documents, law enforcement training manuals that they hand down to state, federal, local law enforcement agencies, all have it listed in there. If you know your rights, if you're a constitutionalist, if you have a bumper sticker, don't tread on me bumper sticker, you are an extremist. And now they're really going after the Christians. And what they're doing with the Christians in America is starting to be part of a larger trend. It is starting to increase in the amount of rhetoric that is being put out and the attacks. 100 million Christians have been persecuted around the world, with most of them in Syria, Ethiopia. This is a report by a group supporting oppressed Christians worldwide. And Open Doors, a non-denominational Christian group, listed North Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Afghanistan as their 3 toughest countries for Christians last year. Persecution of Christians is on the rise, but it's always been on the rise, just not here in America. We haven't seen what other countries have seen,
but it's coming,
where you can lose your life for being a Christian. Look at the pastor in Iran. Look at the people who sentenced to death for converting from being Islamic to changing to being a Christian. They will kill you. But the government, in their own presentations, and I went over the PDF last Friday, or part of that, where they say, Christians, that's their number one religious extremist, U.S. Christians. They list Catholics also in a separate, and also Jewish Orthodox. They actually list Jehovah's Witnesses too, as a threat. But this is what happened in Nazi Germany with the marginalization of Jewish people, the demonization against the people that spoke out against the Nazis. This is what we are seeing. And what happened to those people in the end? They were taken to camps and killed.
Well, this is part of socialism, too. And socialism, the stepping stone toward communism, the stepping stone toward the
Satanism.
The satanic one world order. Socialism is a key word in understanding what's happened to this country, to the country known as the United States of America. And if you look in the dictionary, you'll see where socialism is often described as a collective ownership and administration of the means of production and the distribution of goods and services. Well, invariably, a centralized authority is needed to administer these means. So that clip that you heard about the children, the Department of Education, that is a means of centralization and control over the children.
Yeah, but they don't care about the children. You give you're a teacher, and you give a child a Bible or even a Bible verse, you get fired.
And well, you do. And folks,
and now,
as you stay with us, I just want to say this: as you stay with us through this program, we're going to be connecting some very important dots. These, along with what's going on in North Korea and the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and this push toward the currency crisis here, and how all of this ties together. I know I just kind of made this wacky circle of topics, but it does all tie together.
Yeah. And I'm going to hit this story real quick. Coptic Christians under siege as mob attacks Cairo Cathedral. A mob attacks Cairo Cathedral. Hundreds of Christians were under siege inside Cairo's Coptic Cathedral last night as security forces and local residents, some armed with handguns, launched a prolonged and unprecedented attack on the seat of Egypt's ancient church. One person, at least, was killed, while 84 others were injured, as Christians inside the walled St. Mark's Cathedral came under a frenzied assault from their assailants in the main road outside. The fighting erupted after a mass funeral for 5 Coptic Christians who were killed during violent clashes in northern Egyptian town on Sunday. A Muslim man also died in the clashes, which happened after an Islamic institute was dubbed with offensive graffiti. Now, that's what was in the article. It says the compound came under fire, under a frenzied assault from their assailants. Why don't you just come out and say it? Radical jihadists.
Well, that's kind of redundant.
Anti-Christian people came out, and it's not their assailants. This was obviously a targeted strike. Over what? Being dubbed with spray painting some graffiti? I mean, really? You're going to start a war on a church?
The template for America we are seeing the template for America, what's coming to this country, when we look at Egypt and elsewhere, but specifically Egypt. Look what happened. We caused the toppling of the Mubarak regime. And once again, we understand Mubarak, what kind of a guy he was. There was stability in the region. The destabilization under the pretext of democratic rule has now waged, or the collateral effect of this has now given rise to the persecution of Christians. Folks, the same thing by unleashing, for example, the Southern Poverty Law Center's report, the most recent report, Mark Patak, the head of this organization. By the way, if you just, folks, you've got to understand how much money is behind the Southern Poverty Law Center. It's unbelievable. They are actually making, I think they got $47 million last year, and their profit margin is well in excess of like 20-some million dollars.
Courtesy of our tax dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
And they label people who are against homosexual marriage as hate groups. But back to this Christian church being attacked in Egypt, one member, Amina Zakaria, 25-year-old Coptic Samaritan, who was inside the compound, had the right answer. She said, "Only God can save us from what is happening right now." And the Muslim Brotherhood is stepping up. The Muslim Brotherhood and other extremist groups are stepping up their efforts to try to get these people exterminated or out of their country. They want them dead or out. And this is something we're going to be seeing here. They're going to want us dead or out. They're setting it. It's already set up. Everything's in place, like I keep saying. The laws are there. The compounds are there. The personnel is there. The bullets are there. The weaponry is there. Everything is missing, or everything is there, except the people who are going to be slaughtered.
Well, we're going to be pushed underground, and is this not part of what we were doing last night, is gathering around our computers or our various iPads and iPhones and the instruments in which we could hear the broadcast, and we will be driven underground. We will be driven into smaller groups. We're going to have open season on Christians, and especially the churches. And this also goes for the Jewish synagogues. We're seeing more and more of this, especially in the Northeast Corridor in Brooklyn, where the Jewish synagogues and the schools are under assault, graffiti, broken windows. Actually, we have reports, and these don't get reported, where Jews are being, I don't want to say robbed, but mugged, brutalized as they walk to and from their various religious services. So we are gradually seeing this incremental creep of hatred. This compliments of the Southern Poverty Law Center, compliments of the Western journalists who adhere and promote this vitriol against Christians who say, and this is the whole part of it, these Christians or these journalists and these groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center are painting us as hate groups, as radical groups. Folks, in April of 2013, this year, if the Illuminati would stick to or will stick to the plans, historic plans, think of what happened in April's past. April, by the Babylonian calendar, which the Illuminati adhere to and follow, you've had so many incidents. To Oklahoma City, for example, in 1995. You've had just a number of other situations take place in April. There will be, in my view, and based on information I've heard and research, there's going to be a blood sacrifice in this month of April. Where, I don't know. What, I don't know. But certainly I believe with children or even or a mass casualty event that perhaps will be blamed on a group named in the Southern Poverty Law Center report.
A group or even a natural disaster. Things could happen. I mean, they can round us up at the willful call of emergency at any time for any reason. The emergency doesn't have to be on U.S. soil. That's in their own documents.
No, you're exactly right.
And this increase in Christian, anti-Christian rhetoric shows how close we are to actually seeing the next step, which would be either making it illegal to be Christian, making it illegal to worship or openly, or worship, period. We have already seen, we interviewed a pastor last year who was arrested for handing out literature on a sidewalk, which is his First Amendment right. We saw a person not only arrested once, but arrested twice and given tens of thousands of dollars of fines in California for holding a Bible study with their friends.
Yeah, exactly. This
is the
we
beginning.
Are in the crosshairs.
Yes. Religion, as we know it, will be, and I mean, when I say religion, I mean whether you believe in Jesus or whether you're a Muslim, a belief in a higher power will be outlawed unless that higher power you believe in is the Antichrist. But even before that, as the Bible says, they will deliver you up for my name's sake to the synagogues. You will be killed for having the testimony of the Lord. And the Lord, Jesus, also said, when that time comes, don't worry or think about what you're going to say, because he will put the words in your mouth when the time comes for you to say those. But it is very clear that, and in Luke, in the book of Luke, I think, it talks about, in Matthew, we know how Matthew 24 talks about the signs of the times in the last days. Perilous times will come, and it gets into, it goes through the order of things that will happen. Well, it's put into a different order in Luke, I think, it's either Luke or Mark, where it talks about you will be delivered up first, or they put that first. You will be delivered up. Then after that, you'll see these earthquakes, and but either way, yes, we are under the bullseye of a target that is run by Satan.
Absolutely.
And our only protection is the Lord. And if we do not put all of our faith into the Lord, we are in dire danger, not from things that can happen to us in this life.
Well, that's very true. And as we continue our program, I just want to take a few minutes and just kind of take a step backward and kind of take inventory here. And I think, as I said before, as we pick up new listeners, just to more or less, and to reaffirm to the what I believe is taking place, what we believe is taking place here. Now we're seeing the end game play out. It's almost like being in the last quarter of a football game, in the last minutes of the last quarter. It's that late. The hour is that late. You know, we saw with the selection process, and it was a selection process in the election of Obama, we saw that this nation was turned from National Socialism, which it was before under Bush as it progressed. And it doesn't take, this is not about political parties. This is about fact. You're taking it from a National Socialism to a Marxist socialism when the totalitarian Bush administration turned over power to Obama. An administration that favors socialist Medicare policies, for example, the health care policies, this new.
You should see the research I'm doing on the Obamacare, and I can't bring you or make a comprehensive presentation because the more I go into it, the more information I'm gathering, and I'm not talking about little bits of information. I'm talking about 300-page PDFs I'm going through, multiple PDFs.
They've done this on purpose, though.
Oh, yeah.
They've done it on purpose.
And I'm learning their language, and I'm learning what they are alluding to and where to look for it the more that I read these. But what has been catching my eye is the ISN number we are all going to be given. And for those of you who don't know what the ISN number is, that is basically it will be a 16-digit identification number. This is in Department of Defense documents. This is in the Internment and Resettlement Operations document. It talks about the detainee processing. And in that processing, it says, you segregate the individuals, you silence them. Actually, I'll read you the list right here, as I do have it up. And the way that they go about silencing you, and I'll read it right from the document so you guys can understand the seriousness of this, and I have done this before.
And also the complexity of it, too.
But they say, yes, when they process you, when you are put into these camps, they are going to, there's a 5-step here. I guess I'll have to pull up the Word document I save this stuff to because that is like a 400-page PDF, and I don't know the page it's on. But yeah, silence you. They say stop detainees from audible clamor, such as singing, chanting, or praying, by using a soft cloth to muffle around their face or mouth. But don't use adhesive.
What context is this referring to?
This is okay, and this is, I'm glad you asked that. We are seeing this is not, and they go through the definitions of who these people will be that will be in these camps. First off, you have civilian internees.
But how do we get to these camps? How do we go from where we are right now to the camps?
Any type of emergency declared on the United States, within, I bet, 24 to 48 hours, they'll have a complete lockdown and already be rounding up the people of all the major cities. Look what they did at the Chicago summit, and NATO summit in Chicago.
Right.
They had all in and out points sealed off. They will do that. But what you said, the answer to your question is, how are they going to pull this off? How are they going to, Well,
we're talking about a healthcare law, and all of a sudden you're talking about...
It's all intercombined. The All Pandemic Hazardous Preparedness Reauthorization Act of 2013, the Internment and Resettlement Operations document, the Department of Defense DOD 1400-25 gets into the 16-digit ISN number. And in the Internment and Resettlement document, it calls it the IR number, your internment identification or detainee identification. But here, detainee processing techniques. Upon capture, soldiers must be processed. Detainees processed using the search, silence, segregate, speed, safeguard, and tag. The 5 T, S and 5 T's. 5 S's and T technique. This technique provides a structure to guide soldiers in conducting detainee operations until transfer custody of the detainee to another authority or location. The 5 S's and T technique is as follows. Search. Neutralize a detainee and confiscate personal items, weapons, items of potential intelligence, and or evidentiary value.
Now they're starting this in the stop and frisk in New York and elsewhere in Washington D.C. They're already engaged in this.
Silence. Prevent detainees from communicating with one another or making audible clamor, such as singing, praying, and it goes on to say.
Now this is after you're in the camp, so you can't.
This is right when you get picked up and you get brought there. I don't know anybody who's been to jail or prison, or this is what they do when they take you and you're processed, you're asked a series of questions, but this is way more detailed than this document. They say silence. Prevent detainees from communicating with one another, making audible clamor such as chanting, singing, or praying. Silence the uncooperative detainees by muffling them with a soft, clean cloth tied around their mouths or fastened to the back of their heads. Don't use the duct tapes, but you are allowed to use physical force to silence detainees. You can segregate them. You quickly move detainees from the continuing risks associated with other combats or sympathizers who may still be in the area of capture. If there are more detainees than the soldiers can control, call for support. Search detainees and hold them until reinforcements arrive. Tag them. Ensure that each detainee is tagged using DD, Department of Defense Form 2745. Confiscated equipment, personal items, and evidence will be linked to the detainee using this, and this ties into your ISN number. This will list certain information in your ISN number, and it will be on a band that is put around your wrist.
And hold on, folks. We're going to put this in context. Go on.
It says the accountability of detainees and their property or intelligence value begins at the point of contact by documenting the information on the DoD form. Locally approved and produced forms may be used to supplement the 2745 DD form, but it says any use, preferably, attach it to the detainee. It is supposed to link the detainee to records such as property, medical, treatment, interrogation data, and transfer records. The number will be used to account for a detainee and a detainee's property until an ISN number is assigned. This is what I was talking about, the ISN number.
Right. This is where the ISN number comes in.
And we don't have to get into all this because I don't have it all ready to go. But this is from the internment and resettlement document, this ISN number, okay? Now, let me read you something from the Department of Defense, which talks about this ISN number. Also, it's a 16-digit number, 16 character setup, and from a completely separate source, SmartQ. This is some kind of RFID technology producer, and they are using a 16-digit number strategically placed, biometric data, and it is part of the DoD also, and they are basically saying they're going to tag you. So is this a vaccine along with something to be able to read your information off of? The SmartQ is an acronym, stands for Specific, Measurable, Aligned, Realistic, Quality. And it says, define results to be accomplished within the scope of the job. Measurable, define quality, quantity, and effectiveness. Aligned, supports specific strategic goals. Realistic and relevant, requirements are achievable yet challenging. Timely, define a timeline for achieving the requirements. Quality, identify the degree of excellence expected. Design and implementation of RFID mutual authentication protocol. It talks about this. The implementation of the PAD-GEN function is a typical 16B linear feedback shift register, which is the series of numbers, the 16 series of characters or numbers used to identify you. It will be your new Social Security number.
Ultimately, yes.
Yeah.
But to really put this in context and perspective, because what you've done is you've taken a magnifying glass and you've looked at the content of these FEMA documents, that talk about putting us in these relocation centers. But when you
let me ask you a question. What do you think ISN stands for?
Individual serial number.
Internment serial number.
Okay.
And this directive from the Department of Homeland Security says you will receive an ISN as soon as possible after your control, within 14 days of your capture.
Oh, okay. But once again, the magnification of the information contained in the multiple documents here is good, but I think what really where people get lost, and I think that people have to understand that the creation of these internment or relocation camps in terms of crises, it's nothing new, but we need that crisis in order to spawn or to activate these internment camps, which we will have. But just to give you some perspective, just during the war between the states, Lincoln, for example, is suspended the writ of habeas corpus. We know this. We see this now being talked about today. Of course, habeas corpus is a critical mainstay of American jurisprudence. All right, I mean it allows our defendants to face our accusers. Well, this action, by the way, was later overturned by the Supreme Court because Lincoln did not previously obtain approval from Congress to suspend habeas corpus. But then, during the First World War, the Supreme Court upheld the right of the president to seize the property of enemy aliens without a hearing. Folks, that enemy aliens is now turned into political subversives in today's environment, and this is what Joe was getting at in a more microcosmic sense. National security rights, national security, that is, might not be able to afford the luxuries of litigation, and we've heard this time and time again. Have we not? Even the argument of some conservatives acquiescing to this. Well, if it means the security of the nation, then we may not be able to afford the suspects or even the group the luxuries of litigation. And I heard that Rachel Maddow even support this in the context of the current Obama plan. But these words led to the Supreme Court consent for the rounding up, the incarceration, and even the property seizure, if you remember back, of Japanese Americans following the attack on Pearl Harbor. But how do you put that into the context of today? Well, you look at the Southern Poverty Law Center report and say, okay, who are the terrorists? You have another Oklahoma City type event. You've got talk radio programs like this being the impetus for the, or not the impetus, but being blamed on the hatred across the United States. And soon we will be like the Japanese, people who will speak against the policies of this administration. Political dissidents. Janet Reno, she headed the U.S. Department of Justice during the incidents at Ruby Ridge and Waco. Even she, believe it or not, expressed some level of concern over the creation of a martial law type state.
Well, but was she concerned she would lose some power? Well, I know she wasn't concerned for people.
Just to put it in perspective, to see how far this has gone, and I guess when you have somebody who superintended those issues to say, well, boy, aren't we going a little far right now? It should ring alarm bells in every person's head.
Every piece of news I've been seeing anymore should be putting alarm bells off in people's heads if they don't already understand what's going on. I wanted to say this real quick. I put up a picture from that PDF on extremism that was used by the Army as a teaching. Just the picture, and I want to read what I wrote too, because I guess this was an issue. People thought I was sticking up for this, and I couldn't understand the logic behind this. Okay, I posted the picture on Facebook of the religious extremism, which lists evangelical Christianity, or U.S. Christians, as the number one threat.
It was a screen capture of the document, right?
I said, who is the biggest religious threat to the USA? The number one threat, ? Christians, Jewish, and Muslims. Not radical Islamists, though they are mentioned, as well as Catholics, Christians, and many more. Believe in God no matter what religion or denomination, and you're a terrorist. People took that as though I was supporting that belief, which I don't understand how you can get that from what I put up there, but regardless.
Well, it shows them, seriously, it's nothing against, I mean, it just shows the mentality, and it shows where people are at, too, because we have attention deficit disorder as a nation where people can see something and they don't read through the entire issue if you don't have, and it shows how we are taken out of context so many times.
What's that? I wasn't listening. No, I'm kidding.
I actually got that.
We got 5 minutes until the break. I can't believe that the first hour is almost over. Let me do this. I'm going to play 2 audio clips on. This has to do with, since we started with talking about the make or break it with guns and Obama, they're also unveiling a 1,500-page document, 1,500-page document on immigration reform. Congress is trying to reach final deals on major issues of immigration and gun reform. They're the 2 biggest issues in Washington this year. Why? Because that's what the people decide will be the theater for the masses at this time. And they want to legalize 11 million illegal people and make illegal your Second Amendment right.
Well, and don't forget, the AP style book and we.
Oh yeah.
Anytime.
Don't say the word.
Yeah. Look, as a journalist, we use. I use the AP style book, and now they've taken that phrase out of the style book. You cannot write as a journalist now.
There were two terms. For the first one had to do with Islam or illegal.
It was illegal alien was the big one that I saw, and that's more appropriate to what we're talking about right now. But this does figure into, once again, the larger picture of all of the headlines we're talking about. So go ahead and play that.
This is Joe Klein. Gun advocates feed people anti-American crap. It's only 43 seconds.
Well, we've become a lot more wimpy country because, these gun advocates at the NRA want these semi-automatic weapons. I mean, you see Marshall Dillon only used 1 shot. What do they need all those bullets for? I guess they just don't feel very strong.
But what about the culture, the cowboy thing?
Well, I think that's at the root of it, but there's something else that's going on now that is really, really dangerous, and it's this festering sense that we need to have these semi-automatic weapons because the government in Washington is about to oppress us.
Yeah, I know.
And that is paranoia that these groups, like the NRA, the Gun Owners of America, they feed this crap, and it really is anti-American.
Oh, anti-American. Also, I'm going to move on to a clip from Rachel Maddow, where
we apologize in advance for this Rachel Maddow clip. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but every time we play a clip from her, I've got to say I can't stand
listening to her either. But this is just such a reach, it's so obvious. Basically, sum it up. There was a pro-gun control protest. At the same time, at the same place, there was a pro-Second Amendment protest where people were open carrying. She equates that to being threatened to be killed for your beliefs on against gun violence.
And the delivery is important.
Last week at one of the events marking the big National Day of Action for people who are calling for gun reform in the states, a group of people showed up to counter-protest in Indiana. They counter-protested a group of moms who was protesting for gun reform.
And these guys were protesting in favor of gun rights instead. You can tell who the counter-protesters were because they were the ones showing off their loaded weapons, circling around the moms group that had turned out to call for gun reform. Now, I can't tell from looking at a guy doing this if his weapon is loaded or not, but they told us to believe that the guns were loaded. The guys carrying these guns told the press, yes, these guns are loaded. Quote, any weapon that is not loaded is just a rock or a club. A reporter then said to the men, which means this is loaded? The answer, yes. You know what? It is intimidating to be in the presence of a loaded AR-15 assault rifle, especially when it is not held by, say, an instructor on a range, or, say, a cop, or somebody else who's there to ensure your safety, but instead is just held by a guy who is holding that rifle specifically because he believes it will help him win his political disagreement with you. You see how that could be intimidating?
No, I don't.
If you believe that our nation's gun laws are too restrictive, if you want more guns everywhere, especially around our nation's school children, you are free to make that argument. You are free to protest. You are free to be rude in your protest. You are free to be uncouth. You are free to do anything you think will help you win the argument. Our protections on freedom of speech are designed specifically to protect obnoxious speech. Nice speech doesn't often get suppressed, so it doesn't need protection. But let the record show at the same time that in the United States, whether the issue is guns or anything else, you will not win arguments that you try to win by threatening to shoot your opponents.
And there you have it. If you go to a gun show or a protest with a gun, you automatically it's insinuated that you are going to, you're threatening those people. But how come she says right off the bat, you have a First Amendment right to say things that are unpopular? The Second Amendment right has nothing to do with things that are popular or unpopular. It shall not be infringed ever. Well, what don't these people understand? And I know that they understand it perfectly well, but it's just makes my blood boil at certain points listening to this stuff because it is just so far out there. I mean, the people who listen to that and agree with it, and I'm sorry for my terminology, mental midgets. It's absolutely frightening that those people have kids or are teaching other people how to live and think in the United States. It is no wonder that the collective IQ for half of the country, is just down the tubes, especially when it comes to political, current events, and the well-being of the nation. But Obama says we are in an economic recovery, and he is making the deficit lower. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Near the Bath and Body Works. Time is running out to file your taxes, and if you haven't been completely truthful with Uncle Sam, he may be keeping an eye on you. Fox's Dan Bowens has more.
You have until April 15th to file a return, and the IRS will be collecting a lot more than just taxes this year. According to several reports, the agency will also be collecting personal information from social media sites like Facebook and Twitter, an effort, they say, to help cut down on fraud, but some believe it goes too far.
Way too far for my IRS. Way too far.
It is too much. Some New Yorkers not happy about a new push from the Internal Revenue Service to monitor social media and digital transactions for tax cheats.
Oh my God, that's just a big invasion of privacy in a way.
I don't understand why
Why, you have to look at my Facebook.
Be careful with what you say on social networking platforms.
Speaking to us via Skype, attorney Kristen Matthews has concerns the government is pushing the limits of what has historically been considered private.
And there are laws that regulate the government's ability to get a hold of things like credit card transaction history. But those laws have become more permissive over the course of the last several years, in particular after 9/11. And so some say that those laws are not any longer in line with the average person's expectation of privacy.
For its part, the government has said it would only check a Facebook or Twitter account if there is already a red flag on a tax form.
I haven't gotten around to it. I'm busy, man. It's tough to do.
Chris Herrier hasn't filed his tax return yet. He doesn't see an issue with the policy, but he'll be keeping his Facebook settings private to keep Big Brother from peeking in.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your #1 priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
I think while I lie awake and contemplate tonight are wearing me out. Well, maybe tomorrow the world will wake and get it right, but I have my doubts. Well, I designed machines of war that scream through the sky. 'Cause I, for one, I like to go to bed free at night under these stars and stripes. And I have my doubt that we're coming out. Yes, I have my doubts, and I have my doubts that we'll make it back out. Yes, I have my doubts, but I wind you up and pull the cord until you're spun right out, and I don't understand.
And I have my doubts too, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, the second hour of this Monday, April 8th, 2013. That's a song by a good friend of the program. His name is Britton Duckworth. Britton Duckworth, or Brittain Duckworth, according to the spelling. You can find that it's called Doubts on YouTube. The artist's name is Brittain Duckworth. I would urge everyone to take a listen to that song in its entirety, because it does express the absolute anguish, angst, in a beautiful way. He wrote it, he produced it, he sang it, and it's an amazing song that reflects a lot of people's doubts about their current state, the current state of this nation. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Hagmann Report for this, the 8th day of April 2013. With me is my co-host, Joe Hagmann. This hour sponsored by Freeze Dry Guy and Granlund Firearms of British Columbia. Both top-notch sponsors, both top-notch Christian great people, salt of the earth entities, business entities. I would urge everyone, if you have the need for freeze-dried food, contact Freeze Dry Guy. And also, if you've got the need or desire for any type of firearms with survival gear, go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the banners for either or both, and I'll tell you this, they will mention Doug and Joe Hagmann because they will give you special.
Yeah, and you're going to want to call Granlund Firearms for your firearms and ammunition needs, as the states are looking to tax guns and ammo. There are several states which are putting $25 tax on gun purchases and 30% extra taxes on ammunition purchases. We have Maryland, Massachusetts, California, and other states like New Jersey, Washington, and elsewhere that are proposing these new taxes on ammunition. Back to the clip I played during the break, IRS collecting taxpayer information from Facebook and Twitter. I'm going to just hit 2 points on this. I'm going to hand it over to my dad. He's going to hit on some very important information on North Korea. The IRS will be monitoring and looking through your Facebook and Twitter accounts for more than just the average voyeurism, I guess you'd call it. Or curiosity of information. They're specifically looking at your social media net or accounts for anything you post about your tax information. It is an effort, they say, to catch people trying to beat the system. What system? The system that steals from you what is already yours, and then if you don't play by their rules, they're going to punish you more? Your wages are private, as dictated by the Constitution. And as you said earlier in the week, or last week, if you had to pay every week the deductions personally by sending the money, they wouldn't get a dime from most people. That's why it's taken out of your check. You're muted. But yeah, they're going to be monitoring Facebook and Twitter, but anybody who would post on there that they're late filing their taxes or any type of personal information like that probably shouldn't be doing that in the first place. So we keep our Facebook accounts just to spread information, try to keep most personal things off of it. And it's just crazy. They will go to no end. They got the census that are coming around every year now. They want to know everything about you, but they don't need to monitor Facebook or Twitter to get this information. They already can listen to you through your dishwasher, as the director of the CIA said last year, or any electronic device, as things are now electronics are mostly two-way communication devices, whether they be computers, TVs, microwaves, toasters.
Any smart device, if you've got them, they can listen.
Yep.
So.
And go ahead. I'm going to turn it over to you. We have news out of North Korea. There are several pieces of news or propaganda, theater of war, New World Order stories out there. Some saying North Korea is expected to test a missile this coming week. Another article I saw earlier this weekend was North Korea is thinking about a strike on Wednesday. This after days and days of constant, here it comes, not to say that the threats or the actions won't be taken, but the propaganda and the buildup of this is at an all-time high. There's more information and disinformation than there is in the actual wars going on.
Well, it actually is, and I'll take it from here on this issue. I had the pleasure to be on KSFO out of San Francisco this weekend, the Barbara Simpson show. Barbara Simpson was a regular fill-in for Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM. She's got the show Babe in the Bunker out of San Francisco, and very, very interesting great talk show, Emmy award-winning talk show host. I don't believe, by the way, that the information or that my appearance or her show is kept on MP3. But here's the deal, folks, with North Korea and the United States and what's taking place. We've got to look at this as an international banking situation. It's all about the Benjamins. And let's take a good hard look at this, but a concise one at that. People aren't seeing the big picture here.
The worthless fiat Benjamins. It's all about control.
Exactly.
The mechanisms people use and need to survive.
That's exactly right. See, people have to understand there's a connection between the events in Syria and what's taking place in North Korea, because, well, people say, well, how prove that to me? And I've actually had people say, you've got no proof or evidence of that. Well, think about this. Where was Vladimir Putin on or about March 28th of this year? Well, or 26th, 28th, thereabouts. He was in South Africa. The BRICS countries have agreed on establishing their Bank of Development. The BRICS countries, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Okay, so these countries have agreed on establishing their Bank of Development, which is a single financial institution for those countries. That was decided on March 26th. The initial capital of the BRICS Bank of Development is going to be about $50 billion, but it's not yet clear exactly how the stakes in this new bank are going to be distributed among the members of the BRICS nations. But see, what this is all about is a new monetary system going against the IMF and the World Bank, at least by Russia, China, Brazil, India, and South Africa, the BRICS countries. Well, keep that, folks, in the back of your mind, because all wars are about money in the end. I mean, the bankers control all wars. They fund both sides of the wars. They're these satanic, fascist, international globalist bankers. All right. Once again, just to recap what I think most of you already know, we, through Obama teaming up with Saudi Arabia, have been implementing Saudi Arabia's agenda to create a pan-Islamic state in Europe. Saudi Arabia is thinking long-term. See, when I say we're not thinking long enough, we're seeing the big picture, but we're not understanding that this is a long-term objective. Saudi Arabia wants the oil and the production rights and the oil rights, and this is how they are going to accomplish it, by getting the territory with the oil. Don't forget Libya, for example. Eastern Libya is oil rich. Now, people, and this is one thing I had a hard time with. Well, the United States could be independent because we've got oil and such here in North America. Well, there is a cost factor. For example, the oil in both getting to it and the production of the oil in the Saudi and in that area is a lot less expensive. It's something totally different when you can actually bring up the oil and get the oil up and drill it and have it for $1 a barrel, we'll say, as opposed to getting it out of the United States, which would be maybe $10 a barrel. Okay, $10 a barrel. It's all about money in the end. But having said that, the pan-Islamic agenda that is taking place through Obama, Clinton, and we are actually doing the heavy lifting for the Saudis. This is what Syria is about. We are attempting to topple the Assad regime, to destabilize Syria and plant the Muslim Brotherhood there, and in fact have already done so. Well, have already set it up where the Syrian National Council will be, in fact, we've already recognized the Syrian National Council to take over after Assad is gone. So it's kind of like the Hegelian dialectic is already in play. We already have the Syrian National Council appointed as the head of Syria after Assad's downfall. So they expect Assad and are working toward Assad to be taken out completely.
They've already elected an interim prime minister.
Right, through the Syrian National Council. That's correct.
They're not expecting it, they're creating it.
Well, and that's a good point, Joe. That's a great point. When you say they, who are they? Well, it's the ruling class of families, the Illuminati, the people that Chris Matthews and others laugh at and say, oh, come on, they're just black helicopter, weird woo-woo people, I think I heard them called once or seen them written once. This is all just woo-woo stuff. Well, no, it's not if you look at the bigger picture and understand it. We are doing the heavy lifting for Saudi Arabia, going after Assad. Russia is saying, no, you can't do this because for a couple of reasons. One thing, destabilization will affect Russia and will affect China, as both China and Russia have economic and military interests in Syria. Also, Syria is the back door to Iran. Iran, of course, for the same reasons, energy reasons and such. But that situation becomes a little bit more complex with the nuclear aspect of Iran. But that said, think about this. Benghazi was all about weapons running into Syria by way of through Derna. And if you look at, and it's just not me saying this, Michael Reagan wrote Building on a Kernel of Truth. It appeared in the American Thinker, on the American Thinker website, folks. I would urge everyone to look that up. Building on a Kernel of Truth by Michael Reagan on American Thinker. I believe it was October 8th of last year, when it appeared, pretty close to our report about Benghazi. But Benghazi was all about the weapons running. See, the reason we haven't gotten the truth about Benghazi is because the objectives are still operational. We are still attempting to overthrow Assad and replace Assad with this Syrian National Council, which is a Muslim Brotherhood type of organization. And now that said, what is taking place here is Russia is saying, no, you can't be doing this, yet you still are. So last week, as Russia was in fact, as Putin was in fact involved in the BRICS talks for this Bank of Development, he also authorized this very large naval exercise exercise. At the same time, and see, BRICS, Brazil and Russia and China, well, the RNC part of this, China at the same time conducted a surprise very sophisticated naval drill to just off the eastern coast of Malaysia. Surprised everyone, including NATO. The same with Russia, kind of a surprise. This was a show of force by Russia and China against America's actions and meddling in Syria. As we continue, they're showing their force. North Korea is part of this, as it is a proxy nation, client state of China. So as we continue to influence and use our military muscle in the Middle East, specifically against Syria, North Korea or China is saying, well, okay, North Korea is going to start acting up, which is going to require us to relocate our military, various military assets, to the North Korean or the Korean Peninsula, which spreads us out, makes us more vulnerable, and also costs us a lot more money and time in terms of resources, military assets. So this is what this is all about. Is the threat there from North Korea? Certainly the threat's there from North Korea. But why is the threat there from North Korea? Because of our actions directly related to Syria. But see, what's also occurring concurrently, the big picture, the long-range picture is there is this intentional orchestration of the collapse of the U.S. dollar. Notice how, when I started out, I mentioned about the BRICS countries. Well, what are they doing? They're jockeying in place, preparing for the collapse of the U.S. dollar, trying to move ahead of the dollar collapse. And we know that there's going to be an incremental stepping stones or a series of stepping stones from the collapse of the U.S. dollar to the establishment of a single world currency. So they're jockeying, they're vying for a position, especially when you consider that as the dollar loses its use as the world's reserve currency, and as the dollar will no longer be used to trade oil, then that strikes at our soft underbelly, the soft underbelly of the United States, which is our economy. So this, if you look at all of these puzzle pieces, what is taking place is Russia is actually striking out against the United States, and China too, against the United States for what we're doing on behalf of Saudi Arabia. But how are they doing it? Are they dropping bombs on Los Angeles and Dallas? No, they're hitting us in the soft underbelly of our economy, that being the dollar. And they are also, through the various agreements here, the Bank of Development, which they are creating, what they're doing is they're countering the IMF and the World Bank. In other words, they are creating these alternate systems of world financial currency systems. They are attempting to grab their piece of the economic pie. This is exactly what's taking place, and this is why it's taking place. So when people report on North Korea and say, Kim Jong or what's his face, is the leader of North Korea is just a 28-year-old guy, kid that's just lost his mind, they're not seeing the bigger picture. And of course, the involvement of Russia and China, the long-range plans. This is not something that's going to take place overnight. Little skirmishes could take place overnight, but the long-range planning. These people are thinking 5, 10, 15 years, a generation even down the road, while we're not, at least not, thinking that. At least not the normal individual. But if you think just about the we always talk about, or we have talked about, understanding the situation so we can do things like get the heck out of the way. Well, and we talk about wisdom too. Well, what is wisdom?
How can you get out of the way of a world-encompassing situation? I mean, unless you have a spaceship that is going to go into orbit and you have the ability, that wouldn't even save you.
Well, no, but think about what George Washington, his alleged, and I'll say alleged because some people don't think it happened, but his visions. No one left save the countryside dwellers, the cities in flames. Okay, well, think about that. Well, what's going to take place here as society rots from within as we have nothing left, as the dollar collapses, becomes worth less and then worthless. What's going to happen? You're going to see situations like Black Friday in every city. You're going to see situations where the police will not be able to protect you. So this is so. How do you get out of the way? Well, what is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to foresee the future consequences of current actions, of present actions. So we have to look at where we are, and I'm not saying rush out of the cities, but what I'm saying is look at where we are in the larger sense, and then make your plans accordingly. Even if you live in the city, you can still make it if you are prepared. But we have to use our God-given minds and understanding. We have to keep our eyes and ears open. We have to collect and process data, understand what it means for us, and more importantly, understand what's happening so we can protect not only us but our families and our progeny, our children and our grandchildren. Because once again, this is a long war. This is a situation where the globalist powers are setting up the chess pieces. North Korea is just a chess piece in this third three-dimensional game of chess. But no one, very few people are making this connection between North Korea, China, Russia, and Syria in the Middle East. These things don't happen in a vacuum. We are seeing the direct result of this Arab Spring, this celebrated Arab Spring, and saying, oh, what a great thing this is. No, it is an agenda to realign the chess pieces on behalf of this pan-Islamic, pan-Arab agenda of Saudi Arabia. It's all for oil. It's all for energy. It's all for the dollar, the money, I should say, not the dollar, the wealth. And what we're seeing here in the United States is the incremental confiscation, confiscation of our wealth through taxation, through even confiscation, as we will see it happen here in the United States, as it has happened in Syria. So you've got all of these things happening at the same time, taking place at the same time, under the guidance, under the thumb of a Marxist/communist Manchurian candidate known as Barry Soetoro or Barack Obama. And it is no accident that Barack Obama was selected here. Of course, don't forget, how was he selected, Joe? You and I talked about this. Remember?
Well, Obama's history, this last election,
how was
was
he
the
selected
October
over,
surprise.
Not this one, but the first one. How was he selected over Hillary?
Well, they went to a meeting of the policymakers behind the scenes, the unelected policymakers. If you guys remember, there were a few days where Miss Clinton and Mr. Obama were missing during the mainstream media reported that they were having secret meetings at Hillary's house, and actually Alex+Jones made a big stink about it, saying where they really were. I think it was at the Bilderberg Group, and the media wouldn't cover it. And that's where the decision was made. Well, I'm sure the decision was made before that, but that's probably where they learned about their future in office. And this last election,
right.
I would say...
Before you go there, think about 2008 and the difference between Hillary and Obama. Guess who spoke up? Guess who argued on behalf of Obama as being the president?
I'm not sure, but Romney, Clinton, McCain, Obama, we would see the same things as we are right now.
No, we would. Indeed we would. But a lot of times when you have a player, different personalities, different people, they have different ways of getting things done. This was seen as the path of least resistance, at least for Obama. But the man who argued for Obama in 2008 the president and CEO of the Center for American Progress, former Clinton chief of staff, former anti-war activist, by the way, and isn't that kind of humorous? He actually, well, his name is John David Skippy Podesta, also known as Skippy, John Podesta. And this is the man who has the ties to the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. And in fact, John Podesta is the guy that is associated with Obama, the Apollo Alliance to a degree, but he's and Soros and all the other ones, but the people that you don't see. And David Horowitz in September 11th, 2009.
Are you referring? Are you not referring to the Trilateral Commission PDF I sent you earlier?
No,
because this dates well before that. Continue, and I'll jump in when.
Well, no. I guess what I'm saying to you is everything that we're seeing today, North Korea, the Arab Spring that led to Libya, or Egypt that led to Libya, and then Syria, all of this has ties to the creation of a global currency. Yes, a global currency after they crashed the dollar. But it also you are witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, the run-up to World War III. And it's going to have a dramatic and drastic and just an unbelievably incredible effect here domestically, because what we're seeing, especially what we're seeing right now that no one's talking about, is how this North Korean situation is affecting America. And by the way, Obama, as this cutout, as this Manchurian candidate, folks, think about this. If North Korea was this unexpected, out of the blue threat, as it is being portrayed as, and we know China is behind North Korean actions, I've got a question for you. Why hasn't the military raised their level of readiness? That's right. We have not raised our
We've deployed
readiness.
Ships, defense systems. We've
That's correct.
done many things, but have not updated the DEFCON system.
Well,
the alert. We have enabled certain processes that would stop or...
No, we've actually visibly flexed our muscles by flying a B-2.
Well,
but
there's more behind the scenes that go on, and there are things in place. Just like 9/11, our government, as well as many of the governments in the world, have the ability to do and stop pretty much anything beforehand as they listen.
And therein lies the key.
So whatever happens, in my opinion, is let to happen.
Exactly, because you see, we did not raise the level of readiness for our military, which means, see, when we do that, what happens is, for example, we know we have foreign troops that are training with and embedded with American troops here and all throughout our military locations all across the globe, but especially here. Once that level of readiness is upped, once we increase that level of readiness, the access allowed to, we'll say, the Chinese, embedded Chinese troops becomes curtailed. So by not upping our military readiness, by not increasing the status of our alert, we have failed to disallow or prohibit the Chinese military troops, for example, for their access to very sensitive areas in our military. So in other words, we are allowing them to observe without molestation what's taking place within our military apparatus. So in a way, not in a way, but you are definitely correct when you say we are allowing by not taking these measures. We're allowing this to take place. We are actually actually facilitating indirectly this way, the enemy to take a look at what we're doing. It's almost as if it's planned. And think about that, ladies and gentlemen.
You're right.
It's almost as if it's planned.
And I want to not get off your point. We'll come back to this. But Jan in the chat talks about military cargo planes over her area, PA, New Jersey. I've seen that the last 2 nights in a row. Are these big cargo helicopters with green and red lights by any chance, Jan? Because I saw the twin-bladed, huge military cargo helicopters both at night, basically around the same time, 2 nights in a row. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, we know that there is, and it's without question that there is. The military, the Department of Defense is working with DHS in moving assets around the country. The question is why? And of course, if you listen to Alex Jones or if you listen to other alternative news sites, the answer appears to be pretty clear. Now, I don't disagree or discount. In fact, I would say, for example, InfoWars has pretty much, they're on the mark in terms of the spreading out of the military assets here in the United States. The reason for this is there is a level of expectation for something to take place here in the United States, and they will be sufficiently and effectively deployed to hotspots. And believe me, like I said, the cities are the key areas where we're going to see the disruptions and the hostilities first. Just think about this. There is the Illuminati, and when I say that, the people that are shaping the world, what do they want us to do as a nation? They're pushing us out of the country into the cities. Why? They're attempting to centralize everything.
Many reasons. One, inner city, you are not able to be self-sufficient as you don't have land.
Correct.
Another thing, you have more privacy in rural areas where you have no privacy in urban areas. Houses are basically on top of each other and right next to each other, if not in a huge
a centralized population in the cities, they're more easily controlled.
Exactly.
And they've got to rely, for example, on government-owned transportation. They've got to rely on an infrastructure that is so controlled by the government. They're not able to create their own. Well, like if you live in the rural areas, you can have land, you can have food. Obviously, raise your food. Try bringing a cow into the Bronx, and it's just not going to work. Try farming in the Bronx; it's not going to happen. So there's this level of the European model, which talk about a fingerprint of the Rothschild, of the Illuminati, of the people that are running this. They're going after this European model, and everyone thinks, oh, how great it is, how convenient it is. Well, to an extent, obviously, it's true. But that convenience, for the sake of convenience, you are also losing your ability for being able to be self-sufficient. And this is what we're seeing, this purposeful love and propagation of this European model to centralize, and so people are easily controlled. And this is they live close to where the services are. And who owns the services? The government does. This is a forced centralization that we're seeing. But think longer. This is a long-term goal. And
they're playing this out to the end game.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
And their end game is from all research I've done, depopulation, land quarantine, basically all land being quarantined from other people, the civilians.
That's right.
And just they wanted to turn this into a haven for the few that are left and turn themselves or their bodies, they think, into a transhumanist body where they will live forever in their minds. This is what they think they can do.
Well, and the last thing I'll say to close this out is these military actions, for example, between the West, China and Russia, they're flexing their muscles, and then the West, of course, comes in and flies a B-2 over, flexing our muscles. We need to view this really as currently a war about currencies, and I know Gerald Saleni talks about, what is that? Currency wars, trade wars, and then real wars.
I agree with you to a certain extent, but no, this is not about a currency war. This is not about, North Korea hating America, so they're going to attack us. This is scripture and prophecy playing out before our eyes. This is good versus evil, and the good are God's remnant on earth and the hosts in heaven versus the evil fallen ones and Satan, who tries to exalt himself as the Most High, and everything else surrounding that.
It can't be both.
Well, it is.
The larger issue
the
is
main,
the good versus evil.
Right, and that is the most important. But always there is other agendas, but there is nothing more important, in my opinion, than the end times and the war versus good and evil.
Well, you're talking motive, which I agree with. I mean, that's true. I'm talking procedure. I mean, how do you get there? Well, or what's the course of action involved here? The course of action involves the currency. I mean, at the heart of this, we're fighting right now. Right, but so you can say, and I agree with you, at the very core, it's good versus evil. It's spiritual. We are looking at the groundwork being laid for the Antichrist, which I believe the Antichrist system is going to be superintended by the bankers out of the London City.
Can I read this to you? Because this is I found this today, and I've read Daniel so many times, the book of Daniel, chapter 11, verse 14. And I know I'm not putting it in context of what they're saying, and I can, but it says, I'll start at 13. For the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former.
Right.
And shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. And in those times there shall be many stand up against the king of the south. Also, the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall.
So,
and I take that to mean the robbers being the money changers, being the New World Order. And as I've said, I have a theory that the New World Order will be crushed by the Antichrist system as it poses as the savior to the problems.
I've heard you express that, and ladies and gentlemen, you're free to weigh in on this on the third hour. I don't see. I see the Antichrist coming in here to take over, to assume the role of the king. Here's how I look at it: you're going to have roughly 10 economic zones, and one person or one place that they would answer to, and that person they would answer to is Antichrist.
We've seen Antichrist, the Antichrist spirit throughout the ages, and they continue to get worse, whether it's Stalin or Hitler, a lot of these mass murderers. Our country now seems to be led by the Antichrist spirit, and that is not the Antichrist, but it is the evil working through the people to set up that system for him.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
And it can only happen one of two ways. The New World Order ushers in the Antichrist and the mark of the beast system, or it is their enemy. And actually reading some of their own words, it seems like they are planning on a battle against a few people. And I mean 2 people.
Well, think of it this way. Think of it as a group of mobs. We've grown up, or we've been exposed to mobster pictures where you've got different mobs in different cities in the United States, and each control a territory. If you think of those as perhaps being like a little Antichrist, or the spirit of Antichrist, the Antichrist, but who would, in the end, who would the mobs answer to? The ultimate dawn of the mobs would be the Antichrist. So what we're seeing, and during that time too, you might see battles between the Chicago mob and the Denver mob and the New York mob and the Chicago mob. That doesn't mean that they're fighting. That doesn't mean that their goals are totally opposite of one another. It means that they're vying for control and vying for a certain positioning. Their goals are the same. So it could be both, but it could be either. But I do believe what we're seeing, and you've got. Look how quickly all of this has happened. Look how quickly since 2001. Look at the last 12 years. Just the last 12 years, the formation of the police state here, the lack of the taking away of our rights, the global changes we've seen. No one person is responsible for this. This is.
Yes, so they are. There's one entity.
Okay.
And there are people that it's all orchestrated for a reason. Everything is happening for a reason. It could be a test of our faith. It could be something for us personally that happens that might not appear to be for us, but it is for us, as we will have the stumbling blocks thrown in our way. We are being tested at the same time these things are being carried out.
Well, that's why we as followers of Christ have to recognize these signs and act accordingly, I believe. We're being tested. Certainly we're being tested.
Right. And we can't accurately assess what's going on and connect it with the scriptures unless we know and have discernment and know from the Lord we are correct.
Well, that's right, but we cannot suffer from the paralysis of extreme analysis where we do nothing because we don't know what to do. We have to act in faith. That's not to say that we have to act irrationally or following some bizarre line of action. We have to root our faith, our education in the Scripture. But we can take this, and folks, I think I don't know. I think we could look at history from Nebuchadnezzar. From the earliest biblical history forward, and we can see that there has been this war in the heavens, war on earth. That this actually today where we're at has taken thousands of years. We've taken thousands of years to get here, and what's behind it is the satanic force. But who's the embodiment of this satanic force? Well, in my research, the families that constitute, we'll say, the Illuminati would be this satanic force. Now, from that body of families is going to arise the actual Antichrist. But the Antichrist doesn't have to be a bad person today. It would be the spirit of Antichrist. In other words, let's say it's John Smith, Prince John Smith of Wingingham. I don't know. Well, that person has got that appointment appointing as the Antichrist, but does he walk around today saying I'm the Antichrist? No, it's a gradual. It's not a gradual, but and I'm talking pretty ethereal, maybe. I don't know what the word might be, but at the appropriate time, he would take over as the Antichrist. But what I'm saying is, it's going to originate in my belief system, and from all my research, it's from this shadowy group of families that. You're muted.
I'm sorry. Your belief system?
From my belief, based on my research, which includes my study of Scripture.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to know what you were trying to say.
I mean, if you look at biblical history, and you look at history in general, and then you look at where we are right now, and you look at the suspects, the people involved, I mean, throughout history, you've got people thinking they're of the bloodline of Christ. You've got people thinking that you've got the really 13 families that comprise the Illuminati, but you've got this belief system that they are the people that are better than the rest of us, that they are special, that they are special because of their Luciferian ties.
We talked about this last night. We heard a Seinfeld reference the Festivus. Festivus for the rest of us. No, these people think they are special. They are believing a deception that has been put in front of them. The Lord says, if you will believe untruths, that He will send strong delusions that you will believe. If you are not willing to find the truth, you will be under a delusion.
Correct.
And that's not... I don't want to scare people by saying that, because it sounds kind of crazy. Like, if you don't believe or find out what's right immediately, the Lord's going to deceive you. No, that's not. If you start following people instead of listening to Him, if you start believing on your will, the way you want or expect things to be, instead of the way He has things, it's a period of time and it's a process, but you will be deceived.
Well, let me just close up by saying this. Today, I believe, and it's evident that more and more Americans have been forced to focus on the dark side of contemporary life. Today, we live under the tyranny of a new world order, and this it's a world that has been reordered, I should say, by a very small group of wealthy financiers and industrialists. They're centered within secret societies such as this Council on Foreign Relations. You ask how that plays into things. Well, they're involved in the CFR and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberger Group. You hear about these groups, but you don't really understand. A lot of people don't understand what their focus and what their relativity is to both history and Scripture. Well, this is where this Antichrist spirit, and ultimately the Antichrist, once again, based on everything I've been able to really come up with, will originate from. We've got to consider how this new world has become more and more of a surveillance society as well, in the police state, which will usher in or assist or facilitate this the end result here, especially under a financially unstable infrastructure and fed by corporations that really hold monopolies on everything from our food to our water to our drugs. Why do you think we talk about, for example, Codex Alimentarius and Agenda 21 and all of this? Because these are all components of the larger issue. And are we living under a fascist government? Well, I think we are. I think by the dictionary, I think it defines fascism appropriately as a philosophy or system of government that advocates or exercises a dictatorship of sorts. Now, it's often talked about on the extreme right, but in fact, if you look at it, it's a progressive communist system by its ideology, but the corporate fascism is heavily involved there as well. But look, the dictatorship today would be of the extreme far progressive left, but nonetheless, it would include, and this is what's really important here, It would include the power of both sides of the political spectrum. Both the government and the corporations have their hands in public affairs. And, a lot of people today believe that America is going downhill rapidly, that the United States is no longer a vibrant republic based on constitutional law. And they would be right. This belief is growing among us. We see the daily headlines and listen to the news reports. We see what's taking place. Many of us are seeking true change, but not the political rhetoric, but true change. But are we going to see it? I don't know. We see these tea parties acting out in massive demonstrations, so to speak. But where are they today? Where are the outspoken people of today? Where are the Christians of today? Where are the people who are anti-abortion, the anti-police state, the anti-wrong? Who is fighting? Who are fighting? Who is fighting for us? We are becoming a zombie nation, and I think that that's the best way to describe it. We have, for the most part, become a zombie nation. We go through the motions in business and politics and everything else, and this is the true horror story behind everything that we're seeing today. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Monday edition, the 8th day of April, 2013. Already 8th day of April 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my son, Joe Hagmann. We are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, the premier father-son radio talk show team on the internet. Be right back.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Connecticut, following in the footsteps of New York and Colorado, about to become the third state to pass a major overhaul of gun laws. The Connecticut Senate has just approved a wide-ranging bill. It goes to the House, where it is expected to pass tonight. The measures include a ban of the sale of so-called large-capacity ammunition magazines, and 100 weapons that previously had been legal will be no longer legal. My next guest says the legislation is so burdensome it is threatening fundamental liberties. Joining us tonight, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, good to have you here.
Good to be with you, Lou.
Connecticut, this looks like a sweeping anti-gun set of anti-gun measures. How big a problem is it?
Well, I think it's a serious interference with the individual right to keep and bear arms. And Connecticut's a unique situation. You have people legitimately grieving over the tragedy right before Christmas in Newtown. You also have a very, very liberal, very progressive government that wants to feel like it is doing something to alleviate that grieving. Unfortunately, what it is doing would not have stopped Adam Lanza, even if these laws had been in place at the time, and will only affect law-abiding people and their ability to hunt and shoot to protect themselves when the police can't or won't. It will not stop a single criminal or a single crazy person from doing the type of thing that has plagued our society.
And there are no measures in this to deal with the issue of mental illness and following that up on background checks. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is a wish list for those who hate the Second Amendment, a dream for those who hate the Second Amendment. Legislators, many of whom know nothing about guns and have never fired them, went through a long laundry list of guns and checked off the ones that they thought looked dangerous. And many of the things that to them look dangerous are plastic additions to the gun to help you aim it. They have nothing to do with the strength of the gun or the amount of ammunition or the speed of the ammunition.
These measures seem to me to have everything to do with politics and the exploitation of tragedy. For example, the Connecticut bill would create the nation's first statewide registry for people convicted of crimes. The registry would not be public, but it would be available to law enforcement. Registry on magazines. I mean, as this goes through, people don't even realize Canada got rid of their registry. It was for rifles only. It cost them almost $3 billion over the course of less than 15 years.
If you lived in Connecticut and wanted to give one of your children a lawfully owned weapon as a gift, you'd have to get a background check from your own child. That's how absurd and unenforceable this is.
Unenforceable. When Judge Napolitano says unenforceable, you mean that. That means there's big trouble with this legislation.
Right. That means it's basically for show. It won't bring about safety. It'll just interfere with law-abiding people like you who wanted to give a gift to someone.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Monday, April 8th, 2013 edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're going to be taking your phone calls for the remainder of this show. Just going to run a few headlines that are very important. Radioactive water is leaking from Fukushima nuclear plant. There are now two separate leak reports that have come out now. TEMCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, said Sunday's leak was small, but it may have contaminated soil and water outside the plant. Well, I could have told you that, as they have been dumping the radioactive water back into the ocean anyway. Regardless, to say back to this article, they are seeing, this isn't in the article, the earthquakes that we saw last week and the last couple days is that seismic activity. They said a while ago that basically a 1.0 earthquake could cause reactor number 4, which is stocked with MOX plutonium, and it's very dangerous. I mean, what was released already and is circulating throughout the northern hemisphere, infecting all of us now, is dangerous. But this stuff is the worst of the worst. And we haven't seen updates on reactor number 4. It's been over 2 years, and 3 of those nuclear out of the 6 that were there melted down completely. There was an explosion that rivaled any nuclear plant problem in history. and the coverage yet is so small. We have these seals that are dying in California. We have tuna that's 2,500 times more radioactive than they should be. We have the kelp that was contaminated. We have grass in Indiana, reports of milk in Connecticut, California. Babies are having more thyroid problems than ever before.
That's right. But we're not hearing about this at all. Boy, I'll tell you what, it's not being covered.
Yeah, listen to this. They say, we have determined that a minimal amount of water was feared to have leaked from the tank. This aside, as I said, from the tons of water they intentionally dump back into the ocean every day. The admission comes a day after 120 tons of contaminated water breached the lining of a different underground storage tank, also possibly leaking into the ground. No, probably leaking into the ground. I would say definitely leaking to the ground. Where did it go?
It just goes away. It goes down the storm sewers, and it just goes away. It disappears magically.
And they go on to say that Fukushima is running low on space to store contained water. I mean, I think they have a bunch of space after all the contaminated nuclear rods were blown out of the way, pretty much clearing their...
We can't even get a straight answer on Fukushima. We can't get a straight answer on Benghazi. We can't get a straight answer on anything. This is a big lie.
They say already 270,000 tons of highly radioactive water, consuming more than 80% of the plant's storage capacity, means that they are at their limit. They can't store any more water, contaminated water. I didn't know they were storing it in the first place because they've openly admitted they're dumping it back into the ocean.
Wow.
But regardless,
it's interesting.
I have a Google alert for the Fukushima.
Yeah.
And I got all in 2 different emails, just full of stories, and I'm reading a tame one, like one of the more
right. But we have to know that Fukushima has really not been contained. That it's still an emerging situation. It's just amazing we're not hearing about this. I want to slip in a story here, folks. Have you tried to buy silver lately? It seems as if silver has been getting harder and harder to come by. A friend and business associate made an inquiry with someone who buys silver in large quantities from mine suppliers, the same mines that supply commercial producers. Today, according to this source, the first supplier stated that they have temporarily suspended sales. The second supplier stated today that they too have suspended sales. Isn't it interesting? Because we know that the commodities markets are criminally manipulating the prices, which actually gives us a good time. It makes this a good time to buy if you are in a position to do so. However, that doesn't remove the criminality behind what we're seeing. And soon I predict that silver and perhaps even gold will be like ammunition. You're not going to be able to get it. And the reason for this, in part, is what I'm not sure if you've seen what Bernanke had done here recently, or some of the statements he has made. I can't find it right now, but he had talked about...
I think I know what you're talking about. Bernanke recently talked about when dealing with questions from Cyprus and talking about the quantitative easing programs. I'm looking for the audio. Ben Bernanke says bank confiscation is unlikely in America. That's one thing he said. I don't know what you have over there.
Well, just trust in gold, not... let's see here. Bernanke is saying that the concern that U.S. dollars might become worthless are not only fueling a push in more than a dozen states to recognize gold and silver coins as legal tender, but it's baloney.
There was an article in the Daily Sheeple, I want to say, today about them intentionally selling a lie, they say, that gold and silver will be worthless if the dollar crashes, so that people... people say that, it would be worthless. I don't believe it would be worthless.
No.
And we're not talking about the people. None of us are storing up treasures for this earth. Any kind of metals we have, and I have a few coins, and that's it. And I know you don't have many.
No.
But this is just for a hedge. I don't want to have what little money I have in a place that it can be taken.
Of wealth. That's all it is.
I'd rather roll the dice. If you're rolling your dice more by putting the money in a bank than you are by buying metals. If they end up being worthless, then that's fine with me. I'd rather have that play out than have my money stolen from me directly.
Well, somebody had written to me today saying, not quite getting the fact that if you don't own it, you don't. If you don't have possession of it, you don't own it. Because think about this: if you've got money in a bank, dollars in a bank, even in a savings account, you've got a receipt. Yeah, what are dollars? U.S. dollars? They're Federal Reserve notes. They're IOUs, basically. What are they backed by? Really, they're backed by nothing except the value is derived from the. As I have said in the past, our ability as the U.S. dollar to assure the free flow of oil. But people are saying, well, don't worry about it, that nothing's going to happen. Well, all it would take would be the threat, or even a ship being sunk in the Straits of Hormuz, to affect the value of the dollar. See, why haven't we seen things, and this is important too, because I've been getting emails, well, why haven't we seen some of the things that you said were going to happen, or Steve Quayle said that were going to happen? Folks, we're seeing it.
Well, let me say this. I would rather you guys be wrong, your sources be 100% wrong.
Oh, me too.
And look like... even though you're just the messenger, I'd rather you look like a idiot who doesn't know anything than see the stuff happen in real life.
You don't want to see it happen in real life, but we are going to see it happen. But once again, the objectives remain the same. That the plans change, but they've got contingency plans upon contingency plans. People have got to understand that there's no single point failure for these people, and they are going. This is what we're seeing is for all of the marbles, as my source likes to say. What we're watching is a war for all of the marbles, and it's going to take some finesse. And what there are things at times they're not ready to do something, so they're not going to do it. I'd mentioned about a preemptive strike in North Korea. People say, "Well, where's this preemptive strike? How come we haven't seen it yet?" Oh, well, wait a second. Okay, I said as early as this weekend, but the crisis is not over. Could there be a preemptive strike? Absolutely. Well, what would that do? Well, of course, it's a magic act. It's part of the magic show. We engage in something like this. What are they going to do? What's the opposition going to do? We're going to feel the effects here domestically on the dollar, perhaps in other means. But yes, things like this are coming, but it doesn't mean that they're coming tomorrow. Just because, for example,
they could.
Well, they could. I would watch very carefully this month of this North Korean situation heating up. But again, is this at the level of threat that they make it out to be? Well, perhaps
we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know their capabilities, their intent, and their immediate plans or agenda that is supposed to be fulfilled from their actions during their presence. So
people are asking the wrong questions, though, Josie.
I don't know about that. People are at different levels of understanding. People are at different levels of what they care about or what's important to them right now as they're doing their research. And for me now, my focus is on Scripture more than anything else. The news, no matter what it is, doesn't bother me. I'm used to it now. I expect to see every day the headlines full with things you wouldn't never believed would be true. But that's
but
the way
are we
it is.
not seeing the Scripture playing out in current events? Of course we are. I think.
Oh yeah, we are.
And it's the prophecies, the thousands of year old prophecies. We're seeing them play out. Once again, current events in Scripture, they're not exclusive to each other, and one does not exclude
Well, obviously,
the other.
no, that wouldn't be the case, because if you don't have things happening, there would be nothing to play out. There would be no way to watch this unfold.
Right, exactly.
But let's stop hogging all the precious airtime and let some callers weigh in, as we have people who've been on hold patiently waiting for a long time. And we got a pretty good-sized group of callers, so we'll say maybe 2.5 minutes, if you can keep it to 2.5 minutes per call. And folks who want to call in, 661-244-9839. If we keep them to about 2 minutes a call, we can maybe fit in 40 calls, but we'll probably get to 10. But we're going to try anyway. Start with area code 724. We're coming to you now.
Oh, your math is pretty rough, but that's all right.
You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What?
Hey, hello?
Yes.
Hi. Oh, gosh. I'm so glad that I was able to get through to you guys. You have both hit so many nails right on the head tonight, and my mind's swimming. And I don't want to. I'm not going to rehearse what I'm going to say, because, I don't know what I'm going to say until. But the family against family thing. If I could just touch on that for a minute. And you said something, Joe, about how do we get people to know? Where's the outcry? Oh man, we've been crying, and you're one of the criers. I'm a crier. It seems like everybody hates me now. I'm the meddling mother-in-law. I'm the one who goes around talking, carrying you're reading your Bible. I mean, it's just like I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad guy. Anyone that talks about what is really going on with Christ coming back, with what we should be doing, with the preparation. I mean, I want other people to talk too. I just want to say this. I'll tell you what. If I'm just going to go on vacation for a week, I'm packing for freaking days. I'm getting my nails done. I'm getting my toenails done. I'm getting my hair done. I'm doing everything I can because I want to look my best. Why aren't I preparing more for the journey that I am on now and going to be even going further into than what I am? And I'm not just talking me. I'm talking about a lot of people, but I'm not. It's not on me. It's on them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is just, you got to get ready. You got to get dressed up. That's what I tell my kids, because that's the kind of stuff they seem to understand. But
you're so right. You are so correct when you say this, and you're in good company too. If they look at you like you've got two heads, caller, why are you preparing? But we all must prepare, and you're doing your job, and you're doing it. It sounds like you're doing it very well too.
Well, the kids are the kids today, this generation, they're so open and vocal, they're so liberal, and when I've heard enough, because I don't sugarcoat, when I've heard enough, and you're telling my grandkids about what gay people do and how they do it and why they do it, and you're encouraging your 3-year-old, if you want to be gay, honey, it's okay. What in the world is going on? Am I dumb? Is everybody dumb? Is everybody dumb?
Oh,
I mean, come on.
Well, we have willfully ignorant. We have unwillful. We have people who choose not to care at all. They're indifferent. We have people who have not seen the information, and then we have people who have seen the information and doubt it, yet still are maybe a work in progress. But yes, there are several classes of learning stages, and sadly, most of the people are in none of them.
But caller, you just keep doing what you're doing, and you know what? As you're going to become, see, you're playing your position in your family, in your venue, in your circle of people, and that's so important for you to do, and keep doing it, and with the resolve that you're doing it with. Oh,
But
we
see, the difference is that they used to say to us, with kindness and gentleness, okay, kindness and gentleness, and then we have to do it soberly, because if we don't do it in a sober tone, not so much a sober tone, but a sober mind and spirit and body, because we are just the addiction. I don't know if it was your show or someone. The addiction rates are just going out the door. I mean, I know I'm one. This alcohol thing, because it's cheap and it's easy to get, it's running rampant. So we got to really pray for everybody that's suffering from addiction. Please try that. Anyway, go ahead. I'll let some other people come on.
Well, I want to say, those struggling with addiction, Pastor Langford talked about this last night. I know that the USA consumes half of the world's drugs, if not more. People that need to stop that habit of addiction, it can't be done until...
It's more than a habit, dude. Don't even use that word.
I said that habit of addiction. People need to stop that.
I understand what she's saying, though, but
okay,
go ahead.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. So anyway, okay, I'm going to let you guys go.
Well, God bless you.
Thank you very much. I listen to you every night.
Oh, well, thank you, and know that you're our extended family, and we'll never look at you like you've got two heads or crazy. We love you. God bless you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, and on that last point I'll make on addiction is until you, and really the Lord will help you with this if you ask, until you make that decision that you do not want it in your life anymore. I don't know too many people who dedicate themselves to quitting but have a store of stuff that they're quitting from.
That's what Pastor Langford said, and you said it.
I mean, you have to just be sick and tired of being sick and tired. And until you get to that point, you really won't be able to quit. You can make attempts. And I've been through this in different phases of my life. It is when you usually hit your low or something changes in your mind, like the Lord pushing you in the right direction. That will help you. Moving on here. We're going to go to area code 503, and I see two 503s in queue, so 503 and 4. We're coming to you now.
Hi, Doug and Joe. This is Terry Hart.
Hi, Terry.
Hi. I was going to say some interesting things about gold and silver. I know quite a bit about that, but since I have 2.5 minutes, maybe I'll skip over that part. I called a few weeks ago about Matthew 24:8, and I don't think I explained myself very well, so I wanted to come at it from a different angle this time. And you may recall that's the verse about the beginning of sorrows, the beginning of the birth pangs in Matthew 24. And what I'm going to say is kind of on the speculative side of things, but I think that I can tie in those birth pangs together with all the interesting technologies we hear about on your show and others like yours, like geoengineering and HAARP and biological weapons, and those strange sounds that people have been hearing all over the world, those trumpet sounds and other sounds people have been hearing out of the sky. And there's another technological project called Project Bluebeam. You may have heard of that. And there's also this New Age idea of the extraterrestrial savior or some kind of a false second coming teaching, a false Messiah that's coming. And anyway, I want to put all that together and tie that together with the birth pangs. And before I do that, I'll just quote part of a verse from Romans 1:20. It says that the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. So God's saying there that we can understand something of God and his creation, and I think we can even understand something of Bible prophecy through his creation. And one example is, this is not prophecy so much, but one example of things we can understand of God are his creation of butterflies. Why did God create the butterfly? What is the, what's the purpose of that? I mean, there's many purposes. I mean, you could say, well, it just shows something of the, creative power of God and the beauty. But I think the butterfly is to teach us about the bodily resurrection. And in a similar way, I think that labor pains, the sorrows mentioned in Matthew 24, are designed in a way that teach us about prophecy. I think that's the reason why Jesus used that metaphor in Matthew 24. And it's not like Jesus was, racking his brain trying to figure out what would fit best to explain, what the famines and the earthquakes and the pestilence and the wars. Those are the four birth pangs that are detailed right before Matthew 24:8. And so I think that not so much that Jesus was trying to pick the perfect metaphor, but God himself created that metaphor long before he even created the world. He had the idea of how birth pangs would be, designed. And one of the things about the birth pangs is that they're preceded by the false Braxton Hicks birth pangs. And so I think all those technologies, like HAARP, which I believe we've heard may be able to create earthquakes, geoengineering of biological weapons could certainly create famine and pestilence. And then, of course, men can create war anytime. But I think that there's an interesting distinction, between the false Braxton Hicks birth pangs and the true ones. The false ones are not consistent in their duration and their strength and the length of time between. Whereas the true ones, talking about true labor, a woman in labor, they're very regular.
Are we seeing the Braxton Hicks now, or are we seeing the true birth pangs?
I don't think the true birth pangs have begun. I think that the false ones, the Braxton Hicks, just like in reality, like it does with the woman in labor, would always precede the true. So false comes first. And
but that time period between the false and the real labor pains, having seen the birth of 4 children personally, I got to tell you, that time period varies. So really,
true.
Even though we could be seeing the false labor pains, I still believe you still have Braxton Hicks close to the actual birth process. So I think that we're still in the season. We just don't know the time, and maybe, and like I mentioned earlier too, this is a long range picture they're looking at as well. So I mean, but go on. I did actually the math on that. If the average pregnancy lasts 280 days and the average length of labor, let's just say it's 1 day. That's maybe first child is close to 1 day. If you equate that to how many years in 2,000 years that would equate to, it would be 7 years out of 2,000 for this period of labor period. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think that it could be more like 10.5 years for the true labor pains. I think that there's some wars that will precede. The most clear birth pangs, I think, are the 3 great wars coming to Israel: the Psalm 83, the Ezekiel 38, and the Armageddon War. Those are obviously increasing in intensity and in size, just like labor pains do. And I think those are part of the true. But prior to Psalm 83, I think we'll see the false, and so maybe some kind of a false appearance of a false Messiah, an Antichrist type figure. And so anyway, that's speculation, but I thought it may fit together with all those technologies we've been hearing about, including the sound, the trumpet sounds that people have been hearing.
Wow. Thanks for bringing that up, because we should do a show on that by itself. But let me ask you a question. You sound like you're pretty well plugged in. Antichrist, any thoughts as to where, who, what?
Yeah, a little. I could share a little bit. that is actually an area. I think it's a really complicated part of prophecy, and I have not dug in. I've been thinking more about it recently. There's so much to prophecy. I devoted most of last year studying through Matthew 24, and spent a great deal. So I have a good handle on that. But there's basically nothing, little to nothing about the Antichrist there. I can tell you one really interesting insight about the Antichrist that you've never heard before, probably, which is there is a psalm about the Antichrist. I noticed as I was going through Matthew 24, more than ever, I kept noticing how many psalms are prophetic, not just Psalm 83. I mean, prophetic as in prophecy, not just of the first coming, but also of the second coming as well. But there is a psalm about the beast, about the Antichrist. And this psalm is pretty amazing because there's all kinds of parallels to the mid-tribulation period where you have Israel fleeing to the mountains, in Matthew 24, 16 and following. Right after the abomination of desolation, you've got Israel fleeing to the mountains. And I think Petra is going to be one of those primary places. And you can read about that in Revelation 12, Isaiah 33, and some other places. But you can also learn about it in Psalm 55. And Psalm 55, I think, is all about, I think it's what the Jews will be praying. They'll be reciting as they're fleeing, because it is exactly a perfect description of that time period. And it actually tells you a little bit about the Antichrist. I'm not one of those who thinks that the Antichrist is going to be Muslim. I'm not convinced that that's true.
I agree.
I think that there's some reason to believe that he may have at least some Jewish heritage. That would not be surprising. The Jews, after all, have to accept him as their Messiah. Right. When Jesus was here, he warned them. He said, "You're not receiving me, but there is one coming who they're going to receive." And so I think we're real close to that. In fact, I'm quite sure that this person is probably alive today, just not known yet by
agree.
People.
I totally agree.
We're that close. But Psalm 55, verse 6 says, "Oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then would I fly away." Revelation 12:14, where you have the story of the woman flying into the wilderness, says that, and to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle that she might fly. And then the rest of verse 6 in Psalm 55, and be at rest, means to dwell. The other cross-reference is Isaiah 33, really amazing passage there about this time when Israel will be dwelling on high. In fact, I should read that. That's so Isaiah 33:16. I got it handy here. It says, just like how God fed the Jews in the wilderness with bread and water for 40 years, he's going to be able to do that, I think, for 3.5 years at the end, in a miraculous way. And it says in Isaiah 33:16, he shall dwell on high, his place of defense shall be the munitions of rocks. Bread shall be given him, his waters shall be sure. So I think that's a picture of that.
Well, in Psalm 55, caller, there is a phrase there, and allow me to paraphrase, that the words, referring to the Antichrist, I believe, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were.
Does that not sound like the end? Yeah, that sounds exactly like the
and you're exactly right. Boy, there's just so many.
That parallels Daniel 8:25, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper. In his hand he shall magnify himself, in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. Earlier in Psalm 55, verse 9 or verse 8, it says, "I would hasten my escape." Verse 9, violence and strife in the city, that would be Jerusalem. Mischief also and sorrow are in the midst of it. wickedness in the midst thereof. That's speaking of the temple in the middle of Jerusalem and the Antichrist in the middle of the temple during the abomination of desolation. And verse 20, he hath put forth his hand against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. That's pretty clear. The Antichrist in the middle of the week breaks the covenant with the 1 week covenant with.
You've done your homework, caller. You have done your homework, and folks, I'd urge people to listen to this.
Yeah, I want to do a show on Daniel, and I was studying this with a friend and listener earlier today, just Daniel 8, and going through the different prophecies in Daniel and learning about the different wars that took place and trying to understand what is still to take place.
Yeah, and caller, you mentioned Dan 9:27, and 28, I think.
8:27.
Yeah, 27 for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And he shall confirm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, that's Daniel 9:27 is a cross reference with Psalm 55:20.
Right.
9:27, and Daniel says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. That's at the abomination of desolation.
Isn't it amazing what we can find when we actually read the Bible and study the Bible and study the Scripture? Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think God's making things more clear. There are even prophecies in Scripture that say that knowledge will increase, that things will be unsealed, Daniel 12. So I think things are becoming more clear. For sure. You want me to tell you what I was going to say about gold and silver and prophecy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that, and I believe strongly in it's a good preparation to own physically in your possession some gold and silver, at least silver for sure. Silver it maybe has more potential to increase in value than gold, I think. But there are at least 4 verses that speak of the great value of gold and silver at the very end, at the very last of the last days. And so I think that, people are concerned because the prices have gone up so much, but I think there's very little downside to the value of gold and silver as we see, nations around the world competing to devalue their monopoly money. You're familiar with Ezekiel 38, the Gog of Magog invasion.
Right.
Attack on Israel. They're coming to get great spoil, and listed among those spoils is gold and silver. You also have, and that's a prophecy that maybe just a few years, at least within a decade, probably I think away. And then Babylon, the description of Babylon, the harlot, the economic, there's the religious and the economic Babylon. 1812 speaks of the riches of Babylon and lists gold and silver. And then there are 2 other passages that many people like to use and say, well, in the last days, gold and silver is not going to have any value because it says, their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. That's Zephaniah 1:18.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, a few things on the gold and those issues. One being that it makes a distinction, I believe, in the heaping up treasures of the gold and the people who have heaped this gold and silver together.
The intent.
Referring to that, or referring to, because I always say, having a few coins of silver for, in case the opportunity arises where you can barter, that I don't find that as storing up treasures on earth.
Exactly.
That's a necessity.
It's a heart. You can't judge anybody on that issue. It's a heart. That's between you and God. It's between you and God if it is an idol. If you are trusting in gold and silver and not His provision. But
right.
all over Scripture, we're told to prepare. I mean, God has called people to prepare for things throughout the Bible. There's all kinds of stories of, preparation of Noah and preparation. There's so many of them. It's hard to pick some out. But God warns the watchmen. Ezekiel 33. God calls the watchmen to warn them of war coming, and I think that Proverbs. Solomon speaks of the ant, preparing, storing up for the winter. I think that it is okay to prepare, and you just have to, judge your own heart as to whether or not you are hoarding unreasonably, and if you're trusting in your wealth or not. So I don't think that that argument, the one in James, that's really a personal. You can't really judge somebody else on that. I don't think. I mean, God may call some of us to store up a tremendous amount, and others maybe not at all, or maybe God will not enable them to. And so I think that one of the things I've prayed about is that that God would raise up some Christians who would be able to provide for the many who will not be able to provide for themselves.
I totally agree with that, and I think as if you have a family, I think it's important to protect your life's toil and to provide for your family, for your children and their children as best you can. Otherwise, we are not good stewards in the eyes of God. And again, it's all about intent. It's not about hoarding. It's not about getting rich or anything like that. It's just about being a good steward for God.
Yeah. And last thing, and I agree with that totally. I have 3 young children and a wife that I have to provide for, and so that's part of my concern there. And one of the favorite verses of those who try to downgrade the purpose of having silver and gold is Ezekiel 7:19. It's the beginning of that says, "They shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed." And they're saying, well, it has no value. And this is, their silver and gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. So it's right at the very end. Obviously,
people used to buy their salvation or think they were buying their salvation in years past.
And they wouldn't have had the gold and silver right up until the end unless they thought it had value. So obviously it does. It's just, you're right. They had the wrong. That reveals their wrong heart. They thought it could deliver them from all their problems. Yeah, so that's really what it's about. It's a hard issue, but it is wise, I think, to prepare. And I think there's many spiritual preparations we can do as well as the physical preparation. Actually, I remember now. Last time I called a few weeks ago, you asked me about. I don't know why. I was kind of off the topic, but you asked me what I was doing to prepare, and I gave you a real brief answer. I don't think it was a very good answer, but so I've kind of been thinking about that last few weeks, what I should have said differently. And I could tell you, there's a lot of things I've done, spiritually speaking, with my family and the church I belong to. I do teaching there, and I've been focusing on teaching things like Romans 13 and Matthew 24. 1 Peter, those are all very timely, I think, for the days we're heading into.
In what context, caller, about Romans 13? However,
Romans 13, Chuck Baldwin, he's written a book on that recently. I've only read part of it. I haven't finished that book, but Romans 13 is all about our subjection to authorities, to government.
Right.
And so there's an argument, among Christians. What does that mean? Where do you submit? Where do you not submit? I mean, how do you deal with that? And so I took some time to teach through that for a couple of weeks. And the bottom line is that just like all the examples we have throughout Scripture, you any time that authorities over you, generally speaking, we're to submit to authority. But whenever they cross the line and ask us to do something that's clearly contrary to God's will, or command that we do something that God is not do, if they command that we not do something that God says we must do, like read the Bible or pray or gather together or share the gospel or protect life, if the government interferes with any of those things, then we obey the higher authority of God. We have to obey God rather than men.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Wow. Well, caller, we really appreciate your call, and what a well-versed call. My goodness, a lot of information covered there, very specific, and of course the larger picture as well. God bless you, my friend.
I'll call you back when I study more about the Antichrist. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
right.
We'll talk. All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Wow, we're gonna hit another call here as we got through two callers, and that there are three callers in that short time, or in that time we had 618. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, my name is Jason in Illinois. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And Jason,
okay.
What's on your mind?
I just had a couple things that were just kind of going through my mind. Last week, I believe it was Doug. He mentioned something about. He had a guest on. I believe it was Thursday night, and it was a vision about a dark room. I forgot that the gentleman's name.
I don't know. I know we did the show on dreams and visions, or is this separate from that show?
I believe this might be separate. Anyway, at the very end of it, the last 5 minutes is when he explained this, and basically the thing that was kind of going through my mind was, I believe that, as you gentlemen both believe, that we're just right there at the door. I mean, I can just feel it in every piece of my being that something is about ready to happen, and I just think that the one thing that the gentleman mentioned is to, we need to seek God's face. We need to pray to Him. And the thing that was going through my mind over the weekend when I was working, which was, even with that being said, we need to pray very deeply for the president, and out of how much we disagree with what he's doing and things like that, and the leaders of the world, we just need to get on our hands and knees and really deeply pray, because it's not over yet. They could still change. They could still change their heart up until the last moment. So,
I agree. I agree.
We get caught up into a lot of sometimes that we get so angry at the things that are going on, and justifiably. But we always need to remember that, because who knows what that can. I believe that gentleman mentioned at the last second he was searching for a room, and he was caught in a dark room, and God was speaking to him, and He said, "Seek my face." And then I believe the door opened up. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I think that's what we all need to still strive for, is even for our leaders and things like that. On a potential of going to war and many people dying and all these other things that you gentlemen speak about. We don't know what's going to happen, and we can all feel that we believe it's going to head a certain way, but we just need to make sure that we concentrate on, just still, hey, at the last moment, Obama and the other leaders of the world, they all still have a soul, and I would take no pleasure in seeing them in hell, and that I take no pleasure in that at all, and that's, they could change their mind, and the decisions that they make affect everybody, and so who knows at the last moment. We don't know I don't want to put any limitations on what God can do. He can change everybody's heart. So I just want to concentrate on.
That's very good. You're right. You're right.
The last thing I just want to mention, because you probably had enough time for one more caller, is make sure that you just read, all the people out there, that please read to your children. Read the Bible to your children. I could read 2 or 3 sentences in the Bible, and I get caught up, and I have to explain it to 10-year-old son, and I could just for reading 2 or 3 sentences, 30 minutes go by, and it's fun. It just goes by that quick. I mean, just a simple story of, the prodigal son. That's the relationship with God. That's how God wants, sees you. He's just waiting there for you. And you just got to explain and teach that to your children, please, because that's just something that's so very important and everything. And I think that a lot of us don't really sit down and spend the time and do that a lot of times.
Amen, caller. And I think you were referring to Paul McGuire as at the end of our show, he started to get into that vision, and that was right at the end of our show. We couldn't elaborate on that, but I'm going to get in touch with him and ask him to come back on, because we only hit, a portion of things we could have went over and I'd like to go over. So I'll try to get him back on, and that will be the first thing we talk about is where we left off.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And did one more last thing, which is, Doug, I believe you mentioned Friday. You said, what have you done to prepare? And something that caught my attention when I was at work over the weekend, which was a can opener. I'm sorry. You can have all the cans in the world, but a can opener without a can opener and a good one, you might find yourself in a hard situation. So that might be very important. And one more last thing is last point. You mentioned actually several times over the last 3 to 4 weeks, which I believe you mentioned one time last week, which was, and I'll just say this, God works in strange ways. I've had many different things, and I believe it was something that you mentioned, and sometimes God speaks through other people. And I'll just say this, you mentioned about going to the dentist and just taking care of your body and taking care of your things that I've procrastinated about. You know what? I heard you mention it about 3 weeks ago, and I believe you mentioned it last week, I believe, and something that was just like, why is this gentleman talking about this on the radio? And it's something I've been praying about, many, many times and everything over the last several weeks. So I just want to say that God speaks through certain people and lets you know, hey, take care of this stuff. So I just wanted to thank you for mentioning that on the radio.
Well, no problem, caller. And indeed, we've got to take care of ourselves in order to be good, not only for ourselves, but for the people that depend upon us. And that's part of it. It's such a small thing, but just imagine, having something wrong in your mouth. And I've had a tooth infection and jaw infection, which I'm dealing with. And, look, it's all part of the preparation process to be prepared for whatever. So take good care, and
you're right. And God bless you both. And you're both in my prayers. And I just want to say thank you and everything for at least getting up there and speaking the truth. Turning on the TV, which actually has helped me in a lot of different ways. Clear my mind. I don't really watch any TV except maybe 1 or 2 episodes on my DVR, one particular show, but it just clears your mind, and hearing actually truth for once in your life, at least for your, So I like to hear one of those news people, any one of those news people, say the word God or Jesus in a good way. You would never hear that. So I would more than likely, I would always trust someone who, uplifts Jesus' name, and I would trust their opinion and their views on things than any of the guys on TV.
Well, that's what we try to do, and certainly without the expletive following the word God or Jesus,
as it is listed in the law enforcement documents. If you use the word God without expletives following it, that's an indication of an extremist, sadly.
Yes. And we fit that bill. Caller, thanks for your time tonight, and God bless you, my friend.
Thank you very much, and God bless you both. Bye.
All right.
Have a good night. We got a minute left. I don't think we're going to be able to get more callers. We should do 2 hours of calls tomorrow because so many people get on hold and don't get a chance to get through.
Well, I'll tell you what, we value each and every one of you as listeners. We really do. We appreciate it. We appreciate you spreading the word about the program, your assistance for us, the things, Steve, my God, the Eagle, what a great what a great eagle. And
yeah.
Somebody had sent me a little ceramic Australian Shepherd. I just, with no return address, and I just want to say thank you. Oh,
yes. And Marcus sent us these beautiful pins.
Oh, yes.
I don't know where I put mine in the videos.
Of course
not. But I mean, it's just a little pin that says "Men of God" and it has a scripture on there. That really was just so fantastic to get any kind of gift from somebody, and with that spiritual message behind it and that spiritual uplifting with it. That is what is so great, and can't even explain the happiness and joy. Don't even feel worthy to. It's just amazing how the Lord works through different people.
Exactly. And you know what, folks? It would take really little effort on your part. Try to uplift someone tonight, tomorrow, today, whenever you're listening to this broadcast. Just go out of your way a little bit and attempt to uplift someone, to make them smile, to make them appreciate being a part of your life or living. And do it with the Spirit of God in your heart.
Absolutely. God bless you all. We will see you tomorrow night, same time. Until then, stay safe. Have a great night.